ॐ तव कथमृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिरीडितं कल्मषापहं शरवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदाततं भुवि वनन्ति भूरिदा जनाः. Your words are like nectar, bring life to scorched souls. They are praised by poets and remove all sin. They are auspicious to hear, wonderful and exalted. Those who spread these words throughout the world are truly giving souls. Welcome to our class on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. We are on the chapter at the Star Theater, Part 2, and the date is Saturday, December 27th, 1884, and we're up to the middle of page 688. Earlier, the great author Bankim Chandra Chatterjee had come to see Sri Ramakrishna, and there was a lot of interest in him. Thakur became curious. He wanted to hear something of what he had written, and M had brought a copy of this book, Devi Chaudharani, and read portions of it. Of course, not the whole thing, it's a long thing, but read portions of it to Sri Ramakrishna. And so the conversation was based on the readings. So this is what we're up to now, page 688. Yeah, if you look at actually the second full paragraph, that Thakur is talking about this devotion to the husband is also a dharma. So there were really two ideals presented in this Devi Chaudharani. The one was the ideal of renouncing everything, that this Nishi for her, Sri Krishna was her husband. She had no other husband than him. And the other was this Devi Chaudharani, who looked upon her husband as God. So Thakur says this is also a spiritual path. So then he says, but you must remember one thing. This is where we're starting now. One cannot see God sporting as man unless one has had the vision of him. Now, just let me read the line right before this. This is something that Thakur refers to many, many times. The Vaishnav Charan once said that in the end, the mind of the devotee is absorbed in the human manifestation of God. So this Nara Lila, that Thakur said now he agrees with him when he gets to the Kashipur, even earlier, that to see God dwelling in human beings, and this is Swamiji's idea of the living God, to see God dwelling in all beings, and to worship God by serving human beings is the highest type of worship. Now, it doesn't exclude other types, but some special emphasis, especially by Swamiji, was given to this. So Thakur says, but you must remember one thing. One cannot see God sporting as man unless one has had the vision of him. Now, this is a problem, of course, because we don't claim or pretend to have had the vision of God, and yet we may like this idea. And, seeing God dwelling in all beings, we can have some sense of what it means. At the very least, we know that we have consciousness and awareness. We know that we have feelings. We know that we have love. We know that we have the different passions. So we assume that this is something common to each and every one of us, and we can do this as a type of spiritual practice. I remember reading a very nice statement by Swami Ashokanandaji, that he was asked one time, how can one see God dwelling in all living beings? How can one learn to do it? And he said, you learn to see God in all beings by seeing God in all beings. He didn't go through any deep philosophical explanation or anything. And just tell yourself, and just convince yourself that you're face to face with God dwelling in human form. No secret mantras, nothing. Yeah? And just, how do we learn to see God? By seeing God dwelling in all beings. So this, what Thakur is talking about, is that really how can we have any tangible understanding of God dwelling within others unless we have the tangible experience of God dwelling within ourselves? Everything goes back to the experience that we have of our own existence. This is the key to every. This is why, as Ramakrishna says, if you want to see the real sun, you have to see it by seeing the reflected sun. So this is why all the emphasis is turning within. That if we have some sense of that divine presence within ourselves, either as consciousness, as the higher self, as the Antaryamin, the inner guide, the personal God dwelling within the heart, then we can extrapolate that and have that feeling that this is also the same with every other living being. That God dwells within all beings. There's a verse from Bhagavata. I never remember it exactly, but something like God sleeps in stones, and God feels in plants, and God moves in animals, and God thinks in man. It's just a way of understanding the divine presence within all beings, manifested in different ways according to the different levels of consciousness or sense sensitivity. So this idea, one cannot see God sporting as man unless one has the vision of him. Yeah, we don't claim that I see God dwelling within you the same way Thakur did. Thakur said, I see Ram alone is there in all men, Sita in all women. We don't claim that. But we can have the conviction that the divine presence as consciousness, as the higher self, is present within all the beings, and have that feeling that serving others is a privilege. It's akin to any other type of worship, and equally as good as worshiping God dwelling within a stone image or any other form of God or conception of God that we have. Here is the living presence in front of us. Do you know the sign of one who has God vision? Such a man acquires the nature of a child. Why a child? Because God is like a child. So he who sees God becomes like a child. Now, again, for us, these are all conceptions. Why is God like a child? So first of all, we don't know anything about what God is like. This is all our conception, how we like to think of God. So to think of God as a child means to think that of the purity of the child and the lack of self-consciousness of the child. That the child, the lack of the type of ego that we get when we grow older, that type of simplicity, to have that in mind, if we like this idea of the personal God. God vision is necessary. Now the question is, how can one get it? Intense renunciation is the means. Now, this question, how to get God realization, this is the question that Thakur is asked all of the time. What are the means by which we can realize God? He'll say God is the realization of God is the ultimate goal of life. And then the question is, what are the means? Upayaki. This is the one question that we read over and over again. And we get different answers at different times. Most common, I would say, is holy company, and then going into solitude, and then prayer. Now, here, for some reason, God is emphasizing intense renunciation, which for him, I don't make a real distinction between intense renunciation and intense longing, because the other answer that he'll give is vyakulata, that we realize God when we have that intense longing for God, that we can't bear to live another second without seeing God. This is the other half of that intense renunciation. that I don't care for anything other than God. Longing for God means I don't care for anything else. So that type of feeling of renunciation, dispassion for the world. A man should have such intense yearning for God that he can say, "O Father of the universe, am I outside your universe? Won't you be kind to me, you wretch?" So this is a particular attitude. They call this Obhiman, man Obhiman sometimes. That to have that feeling of intimacy with God, the same intimacy that a small child has with mother or father, that could press the demands. The child can yell and scream and holler, "You have to give it to me, I want it." So to have that type of feeling, God is so close to us and God cares for us and loves us so much that we can force our demands. You partake of the nature of him on whom you meditate. By worshipping Shiva, you acquire the nature of Shiva. A devotee of Rama meditated on Hanuman day and night. He used to think that he had become Hanuman. In the end, he was firmly convinced that he had even grown a little tail. Now, it's interesting that Thakur talks about this in this fashion because we read that this was his condition. When he worshipped Rama, that he tried to feel that he was Hanuman, that he would live on raw fruits and he would hop from place to place and climb trees. And he tied his cloth around, the cloth he would throw over his shoulder. He would tie it around so it was like a tail in the back. And he even says that his backbone, coccyx, that it seemed to grow an extra inch at the base. So uh, I don't know if he's really talking about himself or if it reminded him or there's somebody else, some other story, but we take this to mean himself. Now, worshiping Shiva, we'll get to Vishnu, all of this. What does it mean exactly? And what does it mean that he says, Jnana is the characteristic of Shiva and Bhakti of Vishnu. One who partakes of Shiva's nature becomes a jnani, and one who partakes of Vishnu's nature becomes a bhakta. Now, we have our Shiva, we have our Vishnu, we have our Brahma. We have different Puranas, that there'll be Puranas that will only talk about Brahma, only talk about Vishnu, only talk about Shiva. That these are called the sectarian Puranas. And we get the impression that these are three different divine beings. And now the philosophical attitude will be that these are three different functions of that one supreme being, that the cosmic function of creation, cosmic function of preservation, and also the avatar during this middle period, which is attributed to Vishnu. And then this final period attributed to Shiva. Now, the devotee of Shiva will think that he does everything. The devotee of Vishnu, Narayana, he does everything. The devotee of Divine Mother. How many times Thakur will say, this is all Mother's sport. She creates and she dissolves and does everything, all Mother. So this is what we can call different types of paradigms. Paradigms. I think it was it Carl Jung who came up with this theory of paradigms, that a certain type of ideal that represents a personality type and different qualities and characteristics and everything. So from the image that we get of Shiva, whether we take Shiva to actually be sporting in Kailash and that whole play, doesn't matter. But the conception of Shiva is someone who has intense dispassion, who likes to spend his time deep in meditation, who represents the path of the infinite absolute, non-dual, impersonal reality, and getting lost in that. And Vishnu, the ideal of this devotion, manifesting as Krishna and Rama and this human play on earth and all of that. So they represent different types of ideals. So whether we take this literally or not doesn't matter. If we meditate on that type of ideal, say Buddha. The Buddhists meditate on Buddha. They don't have to have any idea that Buddha was an avatar, or now he lives in his own divine realm. He's answering our prayers. They don't have to have that. Buddha will represent a paradigm, will represent an ideal, the Buddha nature, that we all have to manifest that Buddha nature. That means that that dispassion and ultimately that enlightenment and that transcendence of suffering and all of that. So uh, even when Thakur talks about those who come from, he uses the term ghor. Ghor means a room, that what ghor someone belongs to. That someone comes from the realm of the absolute, someone comes in the realm. Yeah, we can take this any way we want. We can take it literally, but we can also say that it means that they represent that divine paradigm of more of a devotional attitude or more of a jnani attitude. So he says one who partakes of Shiva's nature becomes a jnani, also one who meditates on Shiva. So we have both things here. That to say that one partakes of Shiva's nature means one has a tendency towards and a liking and is qualified for this path of jnana yoga. So let me read this paragraph again. You partake of the nature of him on whom you meditate. By worshipping Shiva, you acquire the nature of Shiva. A devotee of Rama meditated on Hanuman day and night. He used to think that he had become Hanuman. This is all the power of the mind, even to affect change in the physical body. Yes, yeah. This I think is well known, even nowadays doctors. This power of meditation to even there was one very famous doctor in Boston. What was his name? Something Zen. He was practicing Buddhism and started a whole clinic for cancer patients to do meditation. And there were wonderful advances and really tremendous help. And they're not necessarily cures, but the ability to control it. I had a niece who worked with him when she was kind of as an intern one summer. Yeah, what was his name? Anyhow, do you know, Mark? No. Yeah. So a devotee of Rama meditated on Hanuman day and night. He used to think he had become Hanuman. In the end, he was firmly convinced that he had even grown a little tail. Jnana is the characteristic of Shiva and bhakti of Vishnu. So we can say if somebody has a very devotional nature, that they partake of the nature of Vishnu. They have a little bit of the quality of Vishnu within. It's a way of saying that they're devotional in nature. One who partakes of Shiva's nature becomes a jnani, and one who partakes of Vishnu's nature becomes a bhakta. M. But what about Chaitanya Deva? You said he had both knowledge and devotion. Now, Sri Ramakrishna is emphasizing this point that one will be predominant generally. Now, we're all a mixture. Nobody is 100% of anything. But in some people, this idea of personal God is just nonsense to them. They only want this to meditate on the infinite absolute reality, or this idea of nothingness and void and everything. They don't care for personal God at all. So that'll be one extreme. There'll be others who say, don't talk to me about philosophical things. I don't care. I only want love of God. That'll be the other extreme. Most of us are a little bit in the middle, a little bit of each. But now M is talking about Chaitanya Deva. He had both knowledge. That means that he was full measure of knowledge and full measure of devotion, not a little bit of each, something like that. Now, Sri Ramakrishna, he's been talking about people in general, the typical devotee. So it's almost as if M is challenging him a little bit. Not exactly, of course, but Thakur says sharply, it says. His case was different. So his point is, don't start comparing people to a Chaitanya Deva. And for us, And don't start comparing ourselves to Sri Ramakrishna or Holy Mother or Swamiji, any of the directed type disciples. His case was different. He was an incarnation of God. See how Sri Ramakrishna became so convinced. He himself says when he was young, he didn't have much devotion for this Chaitanya Deva. He thought these Babaji set him up as an incarnation. He didn't have too much faith in all of that till he went to that Navadvip and then had that vision of the two young boys, golden complexion. Yeah. And much later, of course, many other experiences. So there's a great difference between him, Chaitanya Deva, and an ordinary man. The fire of Chaitanya's renunciation was so great that when Sarvabhauma poured sugar on his tongue, instead of melting, it evaporated into air. Sarvabhauma, he was a great Advaitic scholar, a holy person and scholar, both. And when Chaitanya Deva went to Puri for the first time, and he went to see the image and everything, he went into some ecstatic state, fell down unconscious, and they had to take him to some nearby house, something like that. And the Sarvabhauma was there. Whether it was his house or not, I don't remember. But he sees this sannyasin. He's dressed like a sannyasin. He has this Puri designation. He's a member of the Shankaracharya Dashanami Sampradaya. And he feels that it's his duty to make sure that the sannyasin of the Shankaracharya school should know about the Brahma Sutra. So he starts to give instructions on the Brahma Sutra to him and everything with the Shankara's commentary. And at the end, he says, "Have you understood?" And the Chaitanya Deva, he says, "I couldn't make heads or tails of any of your commentary, but the sutras were perfectly clear to me. I could understand all of that." So, and then the Sarvabhauma, he tested him in different ways. One was this putting sugar on his tongue. That you put sugar in your tongue and your mouth will water instantly. But he was so free from sense and enjoyment and everything that it remained dry and the wind blew it away. So the Sarvabhauma became very devoted to him. The fire of Chaitanya's renunciation was so great that when Sarvabhauma poured sugar on his tongue, instead of melting, it evaporated into air. He was always absorbed in samadhi. How great was his conquest of lust! To compare him with a man, a lion eats meat, and yet it mates only once in 12 years. But a sparrow eats grain, and it indulges in sex life day and night. Such is the difference between a divine incarnation and an ordinary human being. An ordinary man renounces lust, but once in a while he forgets his vow. He cannot control himself. Yeah, this is one thing that we sometimes forget. We think of Chaitanya Deva, all love. Everything is love and the devotion for Krishna and everything. But he was very, very strict for those following the monastic life, especially. Very, very strict with all of that. To M. He who has realized God looks on man as a mere worm. Now, what is this? We're supposed to look on human beings as God dwelling, this human manifestation of God. It doesn't mean that. It's not a contradiction of that. He's saying that we don't care for public opinion afterwards. That let people say what they want. It doesn't. I know who I am. I know what I am. I know what my goal of life is. They don't care about it. It doesn't matter. Like the elephant with the dogs barking behind it. Lok na pok. It doesn't matter. Are they insects or are they people? Yeah. So this is just that idea. We have these three things that as monastics that we have to renounce: is putresana, any desire for offspring, and this vittesana, any desire for wealth or possessions, and then lokeshana. This can be taken as desire for heavens and things like that, or public opinion, praise from other people. We renounce the desire for all of those things. So someone who's realized God is content within, Atmarama, content within, doesn't have to doesn't need anybody's approval, anybody's praise or blame are the same. Doesn't matter. And then he quotes from a line: "One cannot succeed in religious life if one has shame, hatred, or fear. These are fetters. Haven't you heard of the 8 fetters? How can one who is eternally perfect be afraid of the world or of what people say? This is part of the world. It means the opinion of other people. How much we're affected by that, how much our behavior is geared towards pleasing other people or giving people a good impression of ourselves. This is one of the reasons why solitude is so helpful. In solitude, that's not a factor in what we do. If we live in the presence of other people, we may be sure to do things that will give a good impression of ourselves. The things we do when we're alone is a test. Yeah, if we're all alone, do we still get up and early and do our meditation and do our spiritual practice? And do we start cheating on our diet as soon as nobody's there? These are different tests. How can one who is eternally perfect be afraid of the world? He knows how to play his game. An eternally perfect soul can even lead a worldly life if he desires. That doesn't mean a worldly life, the life of sense pleasure and everything. It means to live in the world, engaged in the world. They can even go back and if Thakur says, if one is a clerk and the clerk, for some reason, he goes to jail and he's released from jail, what does he do? Go dancing in the street. He goes back to being a clerk, but now free. So worldly life, but not the way we understand worldly life. That I don't know if this Nisarga, that I have no idea whether he was a great soul or not, but they always point to him. He was a beady salesman. Even after whatever experience he had, he came back and remained a beady salesman. And people would come and meet him in his little shop and everything. So that type of idea. There are people who can fence with 2 swords. So worldly life, this will be like a King Janaka. We will never say he was a worldly man, but he fulfilled all the worldly duties and responsibilities that way. There are people who can fence with 2 swords at the same time. They are such expert fencers that if stones are thrown at them, the stone hits the swords and comes back. A devotee, sir, how can one see God? Now, basically, he already answered that through intense renunciation. That was the first answer. If we go back, that God vision is necessary. Now the question is, how can one get it? Intense renunciation is the means. So we'll see. He'll give all different answers. None of them contradict each other. They're all beautiful answers. So here he says, can you ever see God if you do not direct your whole mind towards him? Now, this is also renunciation. We're renouncing our desire for anything but God. That means the whole mind is directed in that. So there are all different ways of trying to describe the state of mind one needs to have. The Bhagavata speaks about Shukadeva. Shukadeva was the ideal from someone from his very birth. He had no attachment to the world. He would wander just like a free soul. That he had that spontaneous, simple type of renunciation, that everything was easy, just a natural born free soul, we can say. Thakur always gives the example of him as a Jivan Mukta. When he walked about, he looked like a soldier with a fixed bayonet. His gaze did not wander. It had only one goal, and that was God. This is the meaning of yoga. The Chatak bird drinks only rainwater, though the Ganges, the Jamuna, the Godavari, and all other rivers are full of water. And though the 7 oceans are full to the brim, still the Chatak will not touch them. It will drink only the water that falls from the clouds. He who has developed such yoga can see God. In the theater, the audience remains engaged in all kinds of conversation about home, office, and school till the curtain goes up. But no sooner does it go up than all conversation comes to a stop, and the people watch the play with fixed attention. If after a long while someone utters a word or two, it is about the play. So if we go to a movie or we go to see a play, then we forget everything else. This is the purpose of this type of entertainment. The purpose of it is not just to present a very high ideal and to entertain us, but for the time being to forget everything else. So those who have such intense longing for God that they forget everything else and just get absorbed in that, they're the ones who can realize God. Then afterwards, if they want to talk, they can talk. They don't have to. Thakur often says that one of the signs of the God realized soul is that they don't have to say anything. They're perfectly content. And then he says, but sometimes when the pitcher is full, you want to pour some water into somebody else's pitcher, it'll make a little glub, 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 glub sound. So that was because of this, Dr. Sarkar used to say, then why do you talk so much? So he would explain it that way. Yes, not out of necessity, in order to help other people. After a drunkard has drunk his liquor, he talks only about the joy of drunkenness. Nitai Gopal was seated in front of Sri Ramakrishna. He was always in ecstasy. He sat there in silence. Now, I've talked about this Nitai Gopal before, but I thought, just for those who would like a little reminder, because his case is very interesting. So I'll just read. We have a few things in here about this Nitai Gopal. His name was Nitai Gopal de Boshu, and later became known as Jnanananda Avadhut. And he was beloved by Sri Ramakrishna. He was some type of nephew of Ramchandra and Manomohan Mitra, both of them. They were also related to each other. And he was also a cousin of the Tulsi Maharaj, who became Swami Nirmalananda, another disciple, a little controversial, whether it's Swami Krishna or Swamiji, we don't know, but anyhow, so he was related to him also. And he came from a very high family. This is the Boshu Vangsha of Ahuriyatola. And very often he came to see Sri Ramakrishna with Ramchandra, sometimes by himself, because he stayed with them very often. He didn't really have any place. He was kind of a free soul. And he was always absorbed in some type of divine spiritual mood. And seeing this divine spiritual mood, Sri Ramakrishna became very fond of him. And he used to say that he was in the state of the Paramahamsa. Now, that sounds like highest possible praise. But then there's another side of the story, that he used to say that he had achieved this state without any special spiritual practice. There's always a little bit of a danger thing. The things we get very easily that we misuse or we may lose. And then he said, because of his slightly different type of spiritual attitude, that Sri Ramakrishna would forbid his disciples to mix with him. They're very strong here. This is the way this is written here. He used to say his attitude is different and he doesn't belong to this place. Towards the end, he would say that. So he was, for some reason, so close, but not really a member of this inner circle, Antaranga. After Thakur passed away, for some months, when worship was done of the relics, he was the one who would do it for 5 or 6 months. And he would spend most of his time in meditation. And then he took the name of Jnanananda Avadhut. And there's a temple there, this Nirvan Mutt that he established, and also something in Panihati. Then he passed away in 1911. So this is our Nitya Gopal. They're curious. There are many curious things. This is Bhavanad, also a curious case, Nitya Gopal, that all part of this lila somehow. Mahanirvan, still there. Rasbihari. Yes. So Nitya Gopal was seated in front of Sri Ramakrishna. He was always in ecstasy. He sat there in silence. Master, to Nitya Gopal smiling, Gopal, why are you always silent? Nitya Gopal answered like a child, I do not know. Master, I understand why you don't say anything. Perhaps you were afraid of committing a transgression. You were right. Jaya and Vijaya were gatekeepers for Narayana. They refused Sanaka, Sanatana, and other rishis admission into his palace for this transgression. Jaya and Vijaya had to be born 3 times on earth. Again, these are all Puranic stories. There's the instance of Shridama. He was Viraja's gatekeeper in Goloka. Viraja is a woman companion of Krishna. Sri Krishna was in Viraja's house. Radhika went there to surprise Krishna and wanted to enter the house. Shridama would not admit her, and so Radhika cursed him to be born as a demon on earth. But Shridama too cursed her. Yeah, I don't know anything about these. These are all different stories, Puranic stories that we have. But there's one thing you should remember. When a boy walks holding his father's hand, he may fall into the gutter. But what has he to fear if the father holds him by the hand? Now, this is also something that we may say that, well, I want to practice this. But we can't practice this. Now we have to cling. We have to cling when we reach the point where we're so absorbed in God that we're incapable, then God will hold us. We have to do everything in stages. We have to do our best now for all of this effort and everything. At the very beginning, we can't simply say, I won't do anything, let God take care of me and do whatever he wants with me. Yeah, that's a very high state. That's Swamiji can say that. Now I won't beg my food, let Thakur send food to me, and food will come. It won't come for us. If we have real faith, maybe, of course. Yeah, that's a different thing. But just as a spiritual practice, that if we can reach the state where we're clinging to God, there's a very high state. If we can go even higher, that we feel God is holding us. We don't have to call on God even. But that means that mind has to constantly dwell on God. So that's also even a higher type of state. The story of Shridama is narrated in the Brahma Vaivarta Purana. This is just seems to be a statement that M makes. This is not Thakur saying that. Kedār, who was a government official, had been living in Dhaka for some time. He had been transferred there from Calcutta. He was a devotee of Sri Ramakrishna and had gathered together at Dhaka many devotees who came to him regularly for spiritual instruction. Now, let me say a few words about this Kedār, because he is also another interesting character. There's people that so dedicated to Sri Ramakrishna, and yet some little funny thing that they had. So let's just see. And many of you know these things, of course, but I find it helpful to try to learn about all of these people, because it's almost like there are old uncles, aunts and uncles and grandparents and relatives and things that we've read about but we don't know too much about. They're all part of the family. So it's nice to get a little insight sometimes into these people. So this is Kedarnath Chattopadhyay, that it says he was a householder devotee who had been specially graced by Sri Ramakrishna. He had a place in the Halishohar, but also in Dhaka. He went there for government work. He had his office there. He was an accountant. In 1880, he met Sri Ramakrishna for the first time. So this will be before the direct disciples come. Latu, we don't know, maybe earlier, but Swamiji and Rajamaji just a little bit before them. And before that, he had been a member of the Brahmo Samaj, number one. He had been a member of the Korta Bhaja. This is the Vaishnava Charan's organization. A little bit questionable in their spiritual practices, with taking wine and doing other things, with mixing with women and things like that. We know about them. And this Nobaroshik, which I think is another similar type of thing. These are all a little bit out of the mainstream, with some tantric practices and things. So he was curious, interested in all the different types of things. One time he's making pranam to Ramakrishna, holding onto his toe. And Thakur says, "What are you doing?" He was trying to get some Shakti from Sri Ramakrishna. And Thakur loved him, praised him, and then one time he said, "Get him out of here, remove him from here." And he starts shaking. He said, "What did the master say?" And they said, so anyhow, because he had this little sketchy background that we see, then ultimately he takes refuge with Ramakrishna. And when he's in Dhaka, he gathered around him a little group. So he had a little desire to be a guru. We get that sense, a little desire to be the guru. And then the other thing is that when he would come, he liked to argue also. So Thakur used to have fun. He used to engage Narendra to argue with this Kedarnath. And then he used to say, Narendra cut his arguments to pieces. That would make him very happy. Okay, so that's Kedar. Kedar, who was a government official, had been living at Dhaka for some time. He had been transferred there from Calcutta. He was a devotee of Sri Ramakrishna and had gathered together at Dhaka many devotees who came to him regularly for spiritual instruction. So he had that guru bhav. He had that little desire, probably. And he comes off as very humble. What should I do? They come, they bring gifts and everything, but he himself set up the whole thing. So many devotees who came to him regularly for spiritual, as one should not come empty-handed to a religious man. The devotees would bring Kedar sweets and other offerings. So whether he wanted it or not, the others looked upon him as a holy man, though a householder and no one of any special spiritual attainment, aside from great devotion. He had great devotion for Sri Ramakrishna, and he was like Ram. He had faith that Thakur was an avatar. So, Kedar to the master humbly, should I eat those offerings? Now, what is the question? Is the question that this is false pretense that I'm getting these things, that should I pretend that I'm a holy man, or are these things impure, that I shouldn't do it, or they should be offered to God, or what is the question? Not exactly very clear why he's asking all of this, but should I eat those offerings? So Sri Ramakrishna says, but it won't injure you if the offerings are given out of love for God, but they are harmful if they are given with any selfish motive. Now, this is partly because he's not a God realized soul. A God realized soul can absorb anything, can digest anything. But he's not at that stage. If somebody with some selfish motive or some other prayer in his mind will give things, and maybe it can be harmful. But here he's saying if these are good people and with no ulterior motive for giving these things, then it won't be harmful. But it is setting himself up a little bit as a guru. He could have said, no, offer these things in the temple instead, don't bring them to me. Kedar, I've explained everything to the devotees, and now I feel relieved. I've told them that he who has given me his blessings knows all. That means Ramakrishna. Master smiling. That is true. You see, people of all sorts come here. So they find here different things. Yeah, everybody used to see in Ramakrishna whatever they wanted to see. He often said that. The Vaishnavas, they come here, they think that I'm a Vaishnava just like them. The Shakti, same thing. Kedār, I do not need to know different things. Master smiling. Why not? Now he's playing with them a little bit. Yeah, because there's Kedār, he's interested in many things. He's curious in all these different traditions and everything. So he's just words. It doesn't mean anything. So Thakur will play with him a little bit. Thakur also, he'll love it if someone can really say, I don't care for anything but God. He's constantly saying that Hanuman doesn't know the day of the week or the fortnight, nothing, only God. But with his Kedār, he's a little bit laughing to himself. It sounds like Master smiling. That is true. No, so I do not need to know different things. Master smiling. Why not? One should know a little of everything. If a man starts a grocery shop, he keeps all kinds of articles there, including a little lentil and tamarind. An expert musician knows how to play a little on all instruments. So he knows that he could tell someone like Kedār, yes, don't care for anything but God. And he's not ready for it, something like that. Yeah. So he's saying, no, you can even have a little fun from time to time. It's okay. Yeah. Sri Ramakrishna left the room and went towards the pine grove. The devotees began to walk about in the garden. Several went to the Panchavati. Sri Ramakrishna met them there and said, I have indigestion. I took a meal at the Maliks. They're very worldly people. This will be Jadu Malik, I'm sure. He doesn't say exactly, but that's my guess anyhow. The Jadu Malik liked Sri Ramakrishna like a friend, respected him, of course, but would talk to him like a buddy. Yeah? And they had like many of the wealthy people, they had their place in the city, and they also had their kind of garden house. His was right next to just south of the Dakshineshwar temple. So Thakur would walk there sometimes, and Thakur was very fond of his mother. Mother was very devout, and also one of the gatekeepers there. Also become like a devotee of his that he liked also. A few of the master's personal things lay scattered on the cement platform of the Panchavati, and he asked M to bring them. He proceeded to his room, and the devotees followed. In the afternoon, the master rested a while. Afterwards, a few devotees arrived. The master sat on the small couch, reclining against a pillow. Yeah, we have to remember, sometimes maybe 10 hours a day, he's just sitting on that same small cot, giving instruction. His legs will get tired, he'll have to lean a little bit. Yeah. So sometimes there would be pillows there, a bolster kind of thing. And sometimes he'll put his legs on somebody's lap and on massage his feet and think, yeah, to just sit there cross-legged, unmoving, and talk for hour after hour after hour. Who can do that? A devotee. Sir, can one know God's attributes through the intellect? Now, again, this question of attributes, what do we mean? We say Saguna Brahman. That means Brahman with attributes. If we're talking about personal God, then the attributes of the personal God will depend completely on the conception that we have, and most of these are Puranic conceptions. And if we talk about what are the attributes of Durga, the attributes of Shiva, Narayana, different things like that, it's different from the Saguna Brahman idea. That there, the main attribute will be this Shakti, this power to project this universe. But if we're talking about this personal God, then it's very much subjective. Always this play of objective and subjective. How we look upon God. Do we think of God as merciful and all loving? How many traditions we think of God as a jealous God? My God is a jealous God. And we read that. And that he wants to destroy our enemies. He'll always look out for us. Now, is this an objective description of God, or our conception that we like to think that God loves us more than he loves anybody else? Can we really pin that on God? That's now we know the real attribute of God. He likes me more than he likes anybody else. He'll defeat my enemies, no matter what. Yeah. So it's a play of the subjective and the objective. So the question: can one know God's attributes through the intellect, Master? Certainly not by this ordinary intellect. Now, this is the same idea of can we realize God? That not through this ordinary mind, through this pure mind. Can one know God so easily? One must practice sadhana. So always goes back to that. As much as we want to say that it's God's grace or anything else, we have to do our spiritual practice. One must also adopt a particular attitude. So this is the second thing that Thakur emphasizes so much. This idea that we have to have an attitude and a relationship. So if I think of myself as a child, God is mother, then I have to feel God is my very own mother. Have that relationship, have that attitude. If I want to worship God as Rama, then I have to take Dasya Bhava, think of myself like Hanuman. So this allows this intimacy of the relationship and the intensity of the feeling and love. So these are critical things. Whether these things are literally true or not are very much secondary. It's all a question of our spiritual attitude. One must practice sadhana. One must also adopt a particular attitude toward God. For instance, the attitude of a servant toward his master. The rishis of old had the attitude of shanta. This is the peaceful attitude. We read in the Vaishnava tradition, there are 5 different attitudes. The Shanta Bhava is very rarely spoken of, and it's considered the lowest. It's considered the lowest. That there's a hierarchy. The Shanta Bhava, then the next will be Dasya Bhava, the attitude of the servant to the master. Sakya Bhava. Each one will get a little more intimate and sweet, friend to a friend. Then Vatsalya Bhava, mother to a child, and then Madhura Bhava, the lover to the beloved, and each one includes the ones beneath it. So Madhura Bhava includes all of the others. That sometimes we look upon the beloved as a mother or a father looks upon a child, or sometimes as a dear friend. Sometimes we feel we want to serve. So all of them are included in that. But the Shanta Bhava is something that is more akin to the path of knowledge. And this idea of the Panchabhavas, these 5 attitudes, is more for the devotee who wants that ecstatic feeling of love. So from that point of view, they consider it to be the first or the lowest of all of them. So the rishis of old had the attitude of Shanta. Do you know the attitude of the Jnanis? It is to meditate on one's own self. To a devotee with a smile, what is your attitude? Now, most likely this is M. This is M. There's very often he'll simply refer to himself as a devotee. He won't even say Mani or any other Mohini, anything like that. He'll just say to a devotee when he doesn't want to let it be known that it's him. The devotee gave no answer, very typical of him, that he'll just remain quiet. Master smiling. See, there'll be personal things about him. He avoided any personal things. Anything about his family life, anything about the death of the child, his wife, and everything, that he'll use a different name, Mani or some other nickname, or just a devotee here. Master smiling. You have 2 attitudes. You meditate on your own self. He was a a member of the Brahmo Samaj. He was a very intelligent man. He was a Gnani from that point of view. And also cherished toward God the attitude of a servant. That means he looked upon Sri Ramakrishna, he looked upon himself as a servant to Sri Ramakrishna. Now, there's another time, and this was after I think M stayed with him for the 3 weeks, when he said, "Now I know your attitude, you're a Shakta. You look upon God as mother." So different times talk about different insights. You'd say. Devotee, hesitating and smiling. Yes, sir. So he's and was so shy. He doesn't want to reveal anything about himself. At the same time, he wants to let Ramakrishna know that yes, you're exactly right. At least at this point, this is my attitude. Master smiling. You see, as Hazara says, I can read people's thoughts. One can maintain those two attitudes only at a very advanced stage. So he's telling M, we can say two things. One is that he's saying that M is quite an advanced spiritual seeker. And the other thing is that be careful, that it's not easy to maintain these two things at the same time. Prahlada to maintain them, but one must work hard in order to practice this ideal. Let me give an illustration. Suppose a man is grasping the thorny branch of a plum tree. His hand bleeds profusely, but he says, "There's nothing the matter with me, I am not hurt." If you ask him about his wound, he will say, "It's all right, I'm quite well." Now, is there any meaning in the mere utterance of these words? One must practice spiritual discipline in keeping with this ideal. So the path of Jnana Yoga, it's very, very easy for us to say that I am the witness. I'm not this body, I'm not even this mind. Nothing can affect me. You can do whatever you want, that I'll simply be the witness. It's very easy to say these things. It's very easy to say that this God that you're worshiping is nothing but my higher self, that I am the source of everything. It's very easy to say these things. But the test is when something happens, some blow comes, how do we react? Generally, we go right back to thinking, how dare you say that to me, that idea. So it's very difficult to maintain this type of attitude. One must practice discipline in keeping with this ideal. So that means that anything comes, we have to fall back into that mood. Yes, I am the self. Nothing can touch me. If we can do it, it's beautiful, of course. And there are times when we should all try to do that. When we go through difficult periods, we can either weep and wail and say, "Mother, save me," or we can say, I am the self. I was never born. I'll never die. I have that inner strength. I can put up with anything, no matter what I have to face, that I can forbear and I can go. But it has to be sincere. This is the main thing. The devotees were giving their whole attention to what the master was saying. Okay, this is the end of that chapter. So a perfect place to stop. We'll start next time on chapter 36, the master's birthday. So we're finishing the end of 690, and we'll start next time, the master's birthday. That'll be Sunday, February 22nd, 1885, page 691.
Why there is a long gap from December to February?
Yes, very good question. And perhaps went on vacation someplace. It was a good one. The question was, why such a long gap that we go from December all the way to February 22nd? Now, one thing that we know is that when M kept his journal, that he later went back and chose things that he wanted to write about. Because the first volume, he didn't have any thought that there'll be 5 volumes when he wrote the first one. And we know that that was just a fraction of everything that he had. So it could be that there were meetings in between, that nothing special took place, or he didn't bother to write things down, or they were occasional meetings. We don't know. We don't know.
Do they have the original manuscripts that he wrote down?
The family keeps these under lock and key. They're very possessive about his journals, and one of our swamis, who was a very good scholar, historian type of scholar, he somehow finagled his way into getting these, and it was mostly about the final stage of Sri Ramakrishna's life, where there are long periods without any entries, and probably because it was too painful. Most of it was watching Sri Ramakrishna suffer from the throat cancer and everything. So he wrote a whole series of books, huh? Antilila, huh? Yeah, about that period based on that. But most people won't get much out of it. It was kind of cryptic things that M himself would use just to remind him, and he would actually meditate, and the scene would come before his eyes, and would remember everything and write it down. So not like he took it down in shorthand, that it would mean that much, but some things that we see. For example, he used to, towards the end, he had to keep notes of things for the case sake of the doctors. So it'll be written in his journal how much blood Sri Ramakrishna lost one day, what food he could take, how long he slept, things like that, that don't come into the gospel, that he didn't feel were necessary. Did I chant? No. Om Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanukam Hadhurga Vigraham Vai Ishavataram Parameshamidikam Tamaramakrishna Sirasa Namama. We bow our heads before Sri Ramakrishna, who is stainless, of infinite nature, whose heart melts in sympathy for his devotees, who is an embodiment of the divine and the Supreme Lord, and ever worthy of our worship. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be. Okay. Thank you, everyone. We will meet again next Friday.